This story is about how I survived the worst day of my life. I thought it was the end, but fate had other plans. The ending will make you think. The flyer didn't scream danger. If anything, it looked like the kind of half-hearted yoga retreat thing Megan had dabbled in before. Beige paper, soft lavender script, one of those spiral logos that looked like a seashell mated with a dream catcher. I didn't even notice it at first, just something stuck to the fridge with a pizza magnet, tucked under a dry cleaning reminder. It read, Women Without Obligations, an evening of reclamation and radiance. Underneath, in smaller text, the location was listed as a house on Evergreen Road, and the host's name was simply Ariel. No last name, no credentials, just Ariel. I didn't ask her about it that night. It felt like one of those things that, if I said the wrong word, even a raised eyebrow, it would ignite one of those hour-long monologues about intuition, energy, and how I never support her evolution. So I let it go. Let her talk vaguely about a feminine journey she'd started, about a group that wasn't religious but more like spiritual architecture, and how they didn't believe in roles, just flows. She'd been dressing differently too, more flowing fabrics, even at breakfast. Her phone had a new screen lock. She started keeping a small brown notebook with her at all times, which I only glimpsed once, when she dropped it between the cushions. I reached for it instinctively, but she snatched it back like it was a bomb trigger. The real crack didn't open until that Saturday. She asked me to drop her off for a workshop at a community center near the park, claiming it was about breaking cycles of obligation. It sounded like a therapy seminar or one of those overpriced yoga things with chairs instead of mats. The street was quiet, and I watched her go inside without any sign of hesitation, just a calm, floating kind of walk. I should have driven off. I even put the car in gear. But something in her gait didn't sit right. It was too smooth, too practiced, like a rehearsed act. And when I glanced at the community center again, I saw something odd. She wasn't going in. She passed it entirely, walking through the side lot, disappearing down a path that led toward Evergreen Road, the same street from the flyer. I killed the engine and waited 10 minutes before following on foot. The wind had picked up, a soft but steady rustle through the trees that masked my steps. I stayed on the sidewalk until I hit the house. A rental, obviously. Nothing about it looked lived in. A fake welcome mat, hanging porch lights with no bulbs, cheap folding chairs arranged on a trimmed lawn like some kind of stage. There were people there, all women, and in the center of them stood a man in a deep purple robe with a hood that obscured his face. Megan approached him slowly, the others parting like he was Moses and she was his newest miracle. She smiled like I hadn't seen in years, and then she kissed him. Not quick, not accidental. It was intimate, full of trust. I stood perfectly still behind a row of hedges, invisible to her, just a few yards away. My stomach clenched, but I didn't make a sound. I didn't rush in, didn't shout, didn't confront. I just turned around and walked back to the car, heart pounding, air thick in my lungs, every step heavier than the last. My fingertips were numb when I started the engine. When I got home, I didn't drink. I didn't scream. I just sat down at my desk, opened the laptop, and logged into the bank. Something had been off for a while. Balances dipping lower than they should, vague descriptions in the statements she always brushed off as subscriptions. I printed every transfer from the past 6 months. The pattern hit fast. Recurring payments always to Ariel Guidance LLC. Sometimes $200, sometimes $400, once even $1,900 labeled Reconnection Retreat. But what froze the air in the room was the $12,000 transfer. A single hit, no description, just spiritual investment. It was money from a joint loan we'd taken to redo the kitchen, a project she suddenly lost interest in a few weeks ago. No receipts, no contractors, just vanished funds and airy promises about not needing material anchors. I filed a formal complaint with the bank that night, requested a full freeze on the account and password change. She wouldn't know until it was too late. But even that wasn't enough. I wanted to see how far the rabbit hole went. I found the group's chat on a half-baked social app she left open on her tablet. All women, all lured into this same mythology. I copied her profile image, created a dummy account, and joined the group under her name. The moment I typed, "I have doubts. Could this be a scam?" all hell broke loose. Dozens of replies, then silence. Then an hour later, the group was gone, disbanded, vanished. When Megan came home later that night, her energy was buzzing like static. She was glowing, like she'd been rewired from the inside. She didn't even notice the bank card error when she tried to order food. She just hummed and danced around the kitchen, talking about how Ariel had opened new channels for her. My skin crawled at the mention of his name, but I said nothing. Let her enjoy the last night of her fantasy. The storm would begin tomorrow. The morning after I saw Megan in the backyard with that hooded freak, I didn't explode. I didn't even breathe wrong around her. I let her move through the house like everything was fine, humming some chant while sipping her overpriced smoothie, tapping away on her phone like nothing had happened. But my pulse was steady and cold now. I wasn't just angry, I was awake. Awake in a way I hadn't been in years. And I wanted facts. So as soon as she left, I sat down at the desk, pulled up our joint bank account, and opened the door to whatever madness she'd been hiding. The transactions were all there, as clean and damning as a confession. She'd been transferring money monthly to something labeled Ariel Global Ventures. Not just once or twice. This went back 8 months. Some payments were in the hundreds. Others hit over 1,000. And then I saw it. $12,000 yanked straight out of a joint loan. Marked as a spiritual investment. She'd taken our shared future, our family's credit, and tossed it into some fantasy built on smoke and robes. I stared at the screen, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. She wasn't just cheating, she was funding her betrayal like it was a damn business. I printed every record, highlighted the transfers, created a folder. If she wanted to talk spiritual awakening, fine. But I had something a lot more powerful. Proof. That night, while she mumbled about vibrational shifts and energy blocks, I filed a fraud alert with the bank. Her access was revoked within the hour. She could chant and sway all she wanted. She wasn't spending another cent of my money on Ariel the Magnificent, or whatever he called himself. But I wasn't done yet. I created a fake profile using her photo, her tone, even her favorite emojis. Got into her sacred little group chat. It was just as insane as I expected. Dozens of women praising Ariel like he'd walked on water. I scrolled, watched them hype each other up with phrases like, "Shed your burden," and "burn the cage of motherhood." After about 10 minutes, I typed, "I have doubts. Could this be a scam?" Then I waited. Less than an hour later, the entire chat was gone. Deleted, banned, erased like it had never existed. And that told me everything I needed to know. If this was legit, they wouldn't wipe a whole group over one question. No, they were hiding something. Something big, something dangerous. And Megan was in the middle of it. When she found out, she went feral. Stormed into the house screaming about violated energy, about how I'd interfered with her spiritual path. She looked like a woman unraveling, wild-eyed and furious. I didn't flinch. I didn't respond. I just watched. Because now I knew what I was dealing with. Not a wife, not a partner, not someone lost, someone gone. The next morning I drove to the courthouse, filed for divorce. Not just any kind. This was under a new statute about financial manipulation through coercive groups. I had the proof, the pattern, the letters where she called Ariel her future. My lawyer, a quiet pit bull of a man, looked over the documents and said we had a shot, a strong one, especially for custody. The group's influence, the money loss, the emotional detachment, it all painted a picture, not of a mother, but of someone who'd abandoned her family for a lie. We filed everything, included screenshots, bank records, her own words. "I'm ready to leave home and start over with Ariel." That wasn't just a thought, it was a damn roadmap to self-destruction, and we were going to use it. While she kept posting selfies with crystals and captions about freedom from expectation, the legal system was already shifting under her feet. She had no idea that within weeks, everything she thought she was building would collapse, and I wouldn't need to lift a finger to make it happen. She'd chosen her path. I was just making sure she got to walk it alone. She found the papers 2 days later, folded neatly on the kitchen counter beside her sage bundles and rose quartz. I had left them there on purpose. She didn't deserve a dramatic confrontation. She didn't even deserve a warning. Let her see the quartz seal stamped across the top and feel the earth tilt under her feet. I was outside pretending to clean the gutters when I heard her shriek echo through the open window. It wasn't fear in her voice, it was ego unraveling. Megan wasn't panicking because her family was breaking. She was panicking because she was no longer in control. She came out onto the porch like a storm front, flinging the divorce papers at me with shaking hands, yelling about betrayal and suppression, about how I was failing to support her transformation. She didn't even mention the kids, not once. It was all about her growth, her path, her right to explore higher consciousness with whatever robe-wrapped parasite had wormed into her head. And when she realized I wasn't engaging, when I didn't so much as raise my voice, she changed tactics. She tried to guilt me, told me I was attacking her spiritual freedom, but I just stood there, watching her destroy herself one tantrum at a time. She had no clue how deep this was going. She didn't know I'd already met with lawyers, filed under the financial cult clause, and included those letters she wrote to Ariel, where she talked about leaving this life and becoming reborn with him. She didn't know that the court had already taken interest, that the judge reviewing the case had a background in handling manipulative religious groups. She was still playing checkers while I had pieces already locked into position on another board entirely. Every lie she told, every spiritual buzzword she threw at me, only strengthened the case I was building. When the court date arrived, she wore white, a flowing goddess-style dress like she thought she was walking into a spiritual showcase instead of a legal reckoning. Her eyes scanned the room, searching for sympathy. There was none. The judge read over her letters, read her admissions, read aloud her promise to abandon all worldly obligations and start fresh under Ariel's guidance. And when he did, I watched something in her eyes flicker and dim. It wasn't remorse. Megan didn't know how to feel remorse. It was fear, real, bone-deep fear. For the first time, she realized she wasn't the one rewriting reality anymore. The ruling came fast. The court found sufficient grounds to declare she'd been willingly participating in a financially manipulative organization. They used the phrase cultic behavior on record. That was the nail. When it came to the kids, the judge ruled in my favor without hesitation. Megan's spiritual commitment had become a destabilizing factor. Her letters showed she was ready to walk away from her family. The court saw that as abandonment. She lost custody in one clean strike. Visitation would be negotiated later, but I had full legal and physical guardianship now. The kids stayed with me. Home stayed with me. And Megan? She crumbled, but she didn't go quiet. Number Megan had always known how to spin a story when things didn't go her way. Within 48 hours, she posted a video on her Instagram. A soft-focus rant about how her ex-husband, the patriarchal enforcer, her words, not mine, had used the legal system to crush her spiritual awakening. She painted herself as a martyr of feminine freedom. The tears were fake, the tone was coached, and the video reeked of desperation dressed up as enlightenment. But she still had followers. Women with crystals in their bios telling her to stay strong, telling her she was a warrior. She soaked it all in, like it meant anything. But karma's funny when it doesn't wear beads or feathers. That same day, another video surfaced, one she didn't know existed. My lawyer had installed a discreet security camera in the front hall weeks before the divorce filing. We never said a word. Let it record quietly. And sure enough, on one of those days when I wasn't home, it caught her stuffing our kid's tablet, a TV, and even the damn coffee machine into her trunk. She looked straight into the lens once and smiled. And just like that, her entire public image cracked. Someone anonymously leaked the footage. Probably one of the women in her old group who'd started waking up too late. Her followers turned on her fast. First came the comments. Wait, is this real? Are you selling your kids' stuff for meditation sessions? Then silence. Her profile vanished overnight. Deleted. Just gone. Like her whole digital identity had been scrubbed in a panic. But it didn't end there. Her employer, some high-end marketing firm, issued a statement the next day. No firing, no drama, just a polite announcement that she was taking an indefinite personal hiatus for career reflection. Corporate talk for she's done. The shift was brutal. One moment she was preaching about ascension and sacred boundaries. The next she was offline, unemployed, and legally powerless. But even then, I knew she wouldn't stop. Megan had built her life on performance. She wasn't the type to go quietly, not when she could still claw at the stage for one more act. And I was ready for it, because the next move wouldn't be spiritual. It would be desperate. I thought maybe, just maybe after the custody ruling, Megan would finally break. Not the public breakdown kind, but the quiet kind, the real kind, where someone sees the wreckage they've made and just sits with it. But I should have known better. Megan didn't know how to disappear. She wasn't wired for reflection or shame. She was built for stage lights, and now that the courtroom had gone dark, she was scrambling to find a new platform to climb onto. And she didn't waste time. The first shot came on a Sunday afternoon. I didn't even see the video before it was taken down. Someone just forwarded me the screen recording. Megan sitting in a dim room with some candle behind her, whispering into her phone camera. She called me an emotional manipulator, claimed I used legal structures of patriarchy to silence her awakening. The performance was almost impressive, in a deranged kind of way. She cried on cue, name-dropped divine feminine energy, and finished with a plea for others to stand against the system. Her hashtags looked like a bingo sheet for spiritual victimhood, but it all fell apart that same night. The old footage surfaced, recorded weeks earlier from a discreet hallway camera I'd forgotten was even active. It showed her walking into the house while I was at work, methodically yanking down the TV, stuffing the coffee machine into a duffel bag, and slipping the kid's tablet under her arm. She didn't look panicked. She looked casual, like she was owed it. She glanced up once, straight into the lens, and smirked. Someone leaked it anonymously, and within hours it had spread across the same circles that once praised her. Comments turned fast. Accusations, disbelief, anger. The ones who once called her brave were suddenly asking how much of her truth had been fiction. By morning, her Instagram was gone. Deleted, not made private, gone. Her job followed. No press release, no confrontation. Her company just quietly removed her name from their website. HR speak followed. Extended personal leave for mental wellness and career reflection. Corporate code for don't come back. I figured maybe that would finally stop her. I thought maybe the public fallout would be enough to keep her away. I was wrong. 3 weeks later, I pulled into the driveway with the kids and saw her standing on the lawn, barefoot with an air mattress and a cardboard sign that read, "I have the right to see my children." No shouting, no dramatic monologue, just a silent, awkward protest like she was outside a courthouse instead of her own former home. I walked past her with the kids like she wasn't there. She didn't move, just stood there like she thought someone would come interview her for a cause. That night, I made a move she never saw coming. Movie night. I invited the neighbors. Rolled out a projector and set it up on the lawn. Pixar, popcorn, blankets. Kids laughing. Adults chatting. Megan stayed put, her sign glowing in the projector light as it flickered across her face. She looked ridiculous, like a protester who'd crashed the wrong rally. Our youngest glanced at her halfway through and said, "Is Mom trying to be a TikTok star?" A few people laughed, not out of cruelty, just because it was absurd. That laugh broke her. She stood still for a second, then bolted barefoot to her car and peeled out of the driveway like a punchline fleeing its own joke. But she didn't vanish. 2 days later, I opened the door to a sheriff's deputy. Calm voice, clipboard in hand. Megan had filed a report claiming I'd threatened her in the kitchen with a knife. Complete fiction. I hadn't spoken a full sentence to her since the court ruling, but she was trying anything now. Anything that could shift the narrative. I called my lawyer immediately. We filed a countersuit for defamation and started pulling records. But we didn't stop there. See, Megan used to run a blog, one she claimed was sponsored by a major lifestyle magazine. She used their branding, their name, even tagged them in her downloads. Thing is, none of it was real. I'd kept screenshots, archives, even saved emails she wrote while pretending to be affiliated. So I forwarded it all, professionally, to the magazine's legal team. A week later, I got a reply. Formal language, clear intent. She was now facing a $90,000 lawsuit for unauthorized use of trademark content. And just like that, her last thread snapped. She was out of money, out of platforms, out of people willing to carry the burden of her collapse. Ariel, from what I heard, had already moved on to new followers. She tried calling friends, old co-workers, even her sister. Nobody was buying her story anymore. The same people she once manipulated now locked their doors, muted her name, and waited for the noise to fade. But I knew her better than anyone. There'd be one more move, one final attempt to wedge herself back into the life she lost. Because Megan didn't understand what real endings looked like. The month that followed was quiet, but not in a way that felt safe. It was the kind of quiet that presses behind your eyes, like a pressure building before a storm. The kids were settling into normal again. Mornings were calm, their laughter was natural, and bedtime didn't carry that tight silence anymore. But I knew better. Megan hadn't gone. She just paused. Women like her don't walk away when they lose. They wait for the next moment they can twist, the next scene they can hijack, and that moment came on a Saturday. I was mowing the lawn when her car rolled up slow, like she was arriving at a church she'd once been exiled from. She stepped out, dragging the same wrinkled air mattress from her trunk and carrying a new sign. I have the right to see my children. She didn't say anything at first, just stood at the edge of the lawn, eyes fixed on the house like it owed her something. But then she pulled out a folded notebook and began reading aloud. Loud enough for every neighbor to hear. She called it her mother's declaration, said she'd been silenced, that she was the victim of toxic masculinity masquerading as fatherhood. It was a blend of spiritual nonsense and legal fiction, all delivered like she was giving a TED Talk on being misunderstood. One neighbor poked his head out, another just closed his door. I stood on the porch and let her finish. No reaction, no argument. Just let her read her script into the wind. But I wasn't letting her turn my front yard into a stage again. Not this time. That night I set up movie night, again, bigger than before. More chairs, more blankets, full speaker setup. The neighborhood showed up like it was a block party. The kids picked the movie, and just as it started, Megan reappeared. Now with two signs, one in each hand. She planted herself in front of the screen again, trying to steal the spotlight. But the spell was broken. No one paid her any attention. One teenager asked, "Who's the protest lady?" Another replied, "That's his ex." Just like that, a ripple of quiet laughter. Nothing cruel, just done. She stood there a second too long, then turned and left. Quietly. No scene, no slammed door. Just gone. And that should have been the end of it. But she wasn't finished. Not yet. A few days later, I got the paperwork. She'd filed an emergency petition to reinstate visitation. Her claim? Emotional trauma caused by the father's refusal to acknowledge maternal identity. My lawyer barely raised an eyebrow. He called it noise. We filed a response within 24 hours, footage from her protest, statements from the neighbors, and old evaluations from the custody trial showing her manipulative behavior. It wasn't just a defense. It was evidence of a pattern. But then she pulled her dirtiest move yet. She filed a police report, said I'd cornered her in the kitchen and threatened her with a knife, claimed she had a bruise from where I grabbed her. The photo looked more like a shadow than a mark, but it didn't matter. The report still triggered a response. I got a knock from a local deputy, calm, polite, but holding her accusation in black and white. I didn't say much, just called my lawyer. We filed a countersuit the next morning, false reporting and defamation. And while we were at it, I hit her where she never saw it coming. See, Megan had built her healer blog around a fake partnership. She'd claimed to be affiliated with a big-name lifestyle brand, used their logo, even said she was certified by them. I'd saved everything. Screenshots, archive pages, PDF downloads with her branding and theirs side by side. I sent the whole file to the magazine's legal department with no threats, just facts. A week later, I got their reply. She was being sued for unauthorized use of a registered brand, $90,000 in damages. That was the hit that cracked her mask. She had no money, no custody, no stable place to live. Ariel was gone. He'd vanished after the group chat got banned. Her job had cut ties. She tried staying with her sister, got turned away, tried old friends, nothing. Her life was unraveling strand by strand, and now even the illusions she built online were crashing down. But it wasn't the collapse that scared me. It was what might come next. Because Megan wasn't just losing, she was cornered. And when someone like her has nothing left, they don't stop. I didn't hear from her for a few weeks after the lawsuit hit. No calls, no emails, not even a drive-by or a distant parked car. For the first time in months, the air around the house felt normal, like peace wasn't a dream anymore. But I didn't trust it. Megan's silence never meant surrender. It meant she was somewhere in the dark, building her next play. And whatever it was, I knew she'd be aiming higher this time. She wasn't after money or custody anymore. She was after narrative, legacy. She needed someone to blame for her downfall, and I was the only one left standing. So when she finally showed up again, it wasn't with shouting or drama, it was with strategy. I came home one afternoon to find a handwritten note taped to the door. No envelope, just a single sheet curling at the corners. It said, "I'm staying nearby. I won't leave until I speak to the kids. They deserve to hear my voice before it's too late." Nothing else. No signature. But I knew the handwriting. I stood there reading it 3 times, each slower than the last before I crumpled it and went inside. I didn't tell the kids. They'd already adjusted, healed more than I expected. I wasn't dragging them back into her fantasy. But that night, just before midnight, I got the call. My neighbor, Rachel, calm, a little shaken, said she saw someone outside. Said a figure was standing under the tree by the driveway for nearly 20 minutes. Not moving, just watching the house. When her husband stepped out to confront them, they slipped into the shadows and vanished. She didn't see a face, but she didn't have to. None of us did. Megan had gone full ghost mode. I set up cameras the next morning. 2 floodlights. Upgraded the doorbell cam. Motion sensors at every corner. This wasn't paranoia. This was self-defense. And sure enough, 2 nights later, I caught her. At 3:14 a.m., she crept up the side of the house wearing all black, hoodie pulled low. She stared into the kitchen window for a full minute before walking to the back fence. She just stood there, one hand pressed to the wood like she was trying to feel through it. I saved the footage and sent it straight to my lawyer. He filed a protective order within 24 hours, but it didn't stop her. The next move was a press campaign, or what passed for one. She started posting on alt forums and small blog sites, tagging parenting communities and writing under fake names. It was all about a spiritual mother robbed of her children by the court system, a man who weaponized the law to erase her, and a system that favors cold logic over emotional truth. She never used my name. She didn't have to. Enough context, enough detail, and it spread. People started reposting it. A few even believed it. One post got traction on some yoga healing subreddit. The comments were a mix of sympathy and suspicion, but the seed was planted. I didn't try to fight it online. That was her game, not mine. My counter was real-world proof. I kept everything organized. Every post, every fake profile, every click trail that linked it back to her. My lawyer was already prepping to expand the defamation claim if it didn't stop. But then she escalated. She tried to ambush the school. It was a Monday morning. I just dropped the kids off when the principal called. Said a woman, clearly Megan, had shown up at the front office claiming to be there on behalf of a spiritual custody override. I don't even know where she got the phrase. Probably one of her fake blogs. She didn't make it past the front desk. Security escorted her off the premises while the school notified me. No arrest, just a trespass warning. But that was enough. I tightened everything again. Not just legally, personally. I talked to the kids' teachers, the bus driver, even the crossing guard. Gave them copies of the restraining order and made sure they knew who she was and what to do if she ever came near. Everyone was on board, and yet I still felt that edge. That buzz under the surface that never went away anymore. Then she made one final move. She filed a civil harassment case claiming I had stalked her, claimed I'd weaponized surveillance, sent people to follow her, leaked private information to ruin her career. She had no evidence, just screenshots of public lawsuits and an old video of me standing on the porch with the kids during movie night. edited to look like I was confronting her. It backfired. The judge didn't even let it proceed past the review stage. Denied, thrown out. But she didn't even show up to hear the verdict. She'd already vanished again. And for a while, I wondered if maybe this time she really was gone, until I opened my inbox. One message, no subject, just one line. I don't know where to go. I've lost everything. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long time. Didn't click, didn't delete, just let it sit there. The apology was real enough to sting, but hollow enough to mean nothing. Because this wasn't about her being sorry. This was about her fishing for one last lifeline, one final rescue before the waters closed in. But I wasn't reaching out, because this time she was the one standing alone in the dark, and I was finally living in the light. The morning light felt different out here, cleaner somehow. Maybe it was the lake air, or the way the pine trees broke up the sunrise across the water. Maybe it was just peace, something I hadn't trusted in a long time, finally landing and staying put. My new house sat just outside a small lakeside town where the neighbors still waved, and silence wasn't a warning sign. There were no security cameras here, no late-night shadows sliding past the fence. Just calm. And the kids? They were doing better than I'd ever hoped. They were out on the boat that morning, cutting through the ripples with easy laughter, their voices bouncing back to shore like the past had never touched them. Next to me on the porch sat Amelia, someone who understood all of it in ways no one else could. I met her during the court process, back when she was still a state prosecutor working on similar custody cases. We talked during a break once, then again, after the hearing. One conversation turned into two, then more. She never looked at me like I was some broken man trying to patch up a wreck. She looked at me like I was still in one piece, even when I didn't believe it myself. Now we sat side by side, sipping lemonade, feet kicked up on the railing, the lake spread wide in front of us. Her laughter was soft, her voice low. She didn't talk about Megan. She didn't need to. Some things are better left unspoken. Some names lose power when you stop feeding them with anger or pain. My phone buzzed. I glanced at it, expecting maybe a text from a friend, a school update, anything normal. But it wasn't normal. It was from her. Megan, no subject, just the message. I don't know where to go. I've lost everything. I'm sorry. I didn't feel the jolt I expected. No spike of rage. No satisfaction either. Just nothing. She was somewhere far from here, spiraling through the wreckage she'd created, hoping someone would still reach in and pull her out. But that wasn't my job anymore. I didn't owe her anything. Not comfort, not closure, not even a response. That version of life, the one where I kept trying to fix what she broke, was over. I slid the phone into my pocket without replying. Amelia looked over, raised an eyebrow. I gave a slight shake of the head. Her eyes lingered a second longer, then returned to the lake. She didn't press. She didn't need to, because out here we weren't carrying any of that with us. The house was ours now, full of air and warmth, not secrets. The kids had turned the guest room into a pirate den. The kitchen still smelled like the blueberry muffins we'd baked the night before. No locked drawers, no stashed letters, no lies breathing under the floorboards. And Megan? She was gone. Not just legally, not just socially. Gone in the only way that really mattered. She no longer had a place in this life, not because I cast her out, not because I punished her, but because she chose to burn the bridge every time she had the chance to walk across it. I gave her every out, every opportunity to come clean, to be human. She chose masks and games and manipulation until there was nothing left. No money, no kids, no audience, and now no response. That final silence, it wasn't revenge, it was freedom. Real, solid, sun-warmed freedom, where the only people who mattered were the ones still here, laughing, growing, building something new with me. She wanted to haunt this place, but I'd already built a life too bright for her shadow to survive in. That's all for now, folks. Thank you for being with me today and listened. And if you liked my story, please subscribe, hit the like button, and comment below what you think about all this, and what would you do if you were me. Also, don't forget to check my other stories in description below.